All right, good morning. It's Monday, the 18th of November. Thank you again for being on. We have Dean Bai coming on from Canada, and he's amazing, and I'll introduce him in a second. But you know what? I had this video I wanted to show you guys. It was sent to me by somebody, and it is a song of for the return of the captives, of the hostages. So let's start with this. Only 3 minutes long. Wow, beautiful. So that was a song for the return of the captives from Isaiah 61. So I can put that in the chat if you'd like to listen to that again. We don't want to forget those captives. Goodness. Dean, good to see you, my friend.
It's nice to be seen. Thank you, Patricia, for having me here with all the friends of Israel Virtual House of Prayer.
Yes, well, we really appreciate you. We watch your son-in-law Chaim Mailspin quite often in his really good videos. Well done to him. So Dean, well, why don't we pray? Lord, thank you so much for Dean. Thank you for this time together. Thank you for everyone that's on. And we pray, Father, for just a real, oh God, a shift, even for these dear captives, Lord, the hostages, over a year. Mercy, mercy, mercy. So, Lord, even as we begin a new week in this platform of prayer, we thank you for being with us and thank you for answered prayer. You're such a good God. By the way, I want to mention that there was a video released last week of this guy he's Russian-born Israeli named Sasha is his is the short form of his name. But he, if you recall, there was a gal by the name of Sophie Cohen, and she was a captive as well. That was his girlfriend, and she had this incredible story. I shared it months ago of the Lord visiting her in the, when she was a captive in the tunnels, and she had this encounter with God. And so then this is her boyfriend, who was featured on this propaganda video from Hamas. But anyways, we want to pray for him, all of the rest of them. Dean Bai, so eager to hear what you have to tell us, Dean. And so over to you, my friend. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think as much as it's difficult, we're still in a war, and yet seemingly some great progress is being made. It's personal for us because our son-in-law is in the war, and we have friends that are in the war. And over the past year, we've lost some people, and some of our lone soldiers. Some of you aren't familiar. We have a work called the Aliyah Return Center, which is up in the Galilee, and most of our works in the Tiberias and Kibbutz Betzera area evolve around settling Jews that are making their Aliyah. And in the north, those that are making their Aliyah or their immigration are usually, they have less income, and so they're coming from Russia, the Ukraine, India, Ethiopia, and so a lot of clothing, a lot of not just clothing, but you might have to say food hampers and everything one would need, if you can imagine, for making their immigration to Israel and have to start a new life. We teach Hebrew. We have places for lone soldiers, and lone soldiers are those that have no family in Israel but need a place to bunk when they get some time off from serving in the IDF. So that's what we do up there. So that has kept us busy. Very, very busy, especially in the past year. Ali is up in North America. So that's what we do here in North America, is helping to support the Jewish people who've made the decision to make their Aliyah, make their return, and help them, in many cases, be sponsored by Christian families and churches, congregations that could very well help supporting them in prayer. And then ultimately helping even in the aspects of, helping get their containers over and things that they won't get help through Nefesh B'Nefesh or Jewish Agency or other agencies where Christians are able to support that and be a part of their Aliyah. So education is a very important part of what we do, and informing people how to pray effectively as it relates to not only the return of the Jewish people, but their settling in the new land. And the thing I'm probably most excited today to share with you all, and thank you, Patricia, for giving opportunity, is the African International University. It's a university in Nairobi. They've established the Center for Jewish and Judaic Studies. And beginning on January 10th and 11th, our first semester, basically our first program, although there'll be diploma programs for masters and PhDs, but our first program is a certificate program that's starting this January, ultimately with 2 semesters every second weekend, and it will ultimately take us to a graduation on July 4th, and hopefully those same students will come and spend 2 months serving in the land of Israel. This is crazy huge. Africa, especially from a leadership level, are saying we need something to train our bishops and our pastors, just to connect and align with the purposes God has, not only for Africa and Israel, but the nations as it relates to Israel. So we've been very excited about working on this. We've been working very hard since January. And for those who might be interested, we have teaser sessions. Our next one's on this actually weekend, Friday and Saturday, November 22nd and 23rd. another one on the 6th and 7th. And you can get this information if somebody wants to put our website in the chat, return.co.il, or just plug in Africa International University in Nairobi, and you can register for these. I think the exciting thing is it's not just talking heads teaching and opening up a Bible at the pulpit or a blackboard behind them, giving some theological teaching and understanding. We've taken Israel, the greatest classroom in the world. We're working with the body of Yeshua in the land and also the religious Jewish community in Israel, so as to be able to bring teaching from Israel every week into classrooms around the world and into homes around the world. And so our first certificate program is basically using the internet and bringing the reality of Israel right to where somebody has the ability to have a laptop computer or even a cell phone. And so, yeah, if I can invite all you to pray, and if you want to get more understanding to understand how to better pray, it's not easy working with a North American culture and an African culture to then work with an Israel culture and to bring that with many different I got to tell you, it's extremely challenging. It teaches fellows like myself the mercy of God and the patience and how to actually even extend that to others. So we really do need a lot of prayer, but it's advancing and it's exciting, and I think an interesting story that you might like is the Vice Chancellor. His name is Dr. Nelson. He was in Turkey on October 7th last year. And while in Turkey with many global leaders, he was the General Secretary for the Evangelical Alliance for Kenya, 70,000 churches. And the war breaks loose. So what do? You work with your other colleague leaders and you say, hey, listen, we need a statement to come from the church globally, and worked for 2 or 3 days during that conference and nothing could be done. He was absolutely distressed as a leader. A general secretary came back to Kenya and he prayed and he says, Lord, I want to have an impact on the church in the nations so it can be able to embrace what you're doing with Israel and the Jewish people, identifying and recognizing that the church is far from understanding our role in the nations with Israel and with the Jewish people. And he prayed. By January, he was already in negotiations for the university, which he felt was an answer to his prayer, to be able to get the student before he's a missionary, before he's a pastor, and be able to take any replacement theology beginnings that student may have had out of them. And I was brought to visit him as General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance for Kenya. However, he was right in the transition of being the new Vice Chancellor for the university. And so we had to go to the university. And while at the university, I'm saying to the bishop I was with, is this person a partner that we can help so that Africa can rise to his purposes? And he says, well, if it comes up in our conversation, let's see what happens. Well, we weren't in the meeting 5 minutes. And he says, Dean, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be at some of your conferences. However, I've seen some of them online. Is there any way that Return Ministries would be interested in a collaboration and a partnership with the university, not only to reach Africa, but to reach nations from this university? And I says, this is amazing. We had just talked in your reception about this, Bishop and I and his wife. And he says, wow. He went right into it. He says, let's get the MOU out. And before you know it, the MOU uh, principles on the memorandum of understanding began to be discussed. And then he says, do you mind if we actually bring somebody involved in our partnerships in here? The door opens up, and there was Shalom Theud. She was one of our students at the Aliyah Return Center in 2017. She spent 3 months with me. I couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe I was in Kenya. I couldn't believe she has been working at this university next to this new vice chancellor for her. And so we saw these signs and wonders this past January. Things have progressed to the extent that we dedicated with the ambassador for Israel on September 6th. And January, the first curriculum begins. It's a first in English-speaking Africa. And I'm very excited about it, obviously. And yet I think we could all be excited about it because it's going to help advance education that is absolutely critical to the basic congregation, right down to the congregational level in nations around the world, and certainly in the third world nations. And so, yeah, I invite us to pray about it. Let me just put something quickly up here, if I can. There we go. This might just give you a little picture of what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's the Center for Jewish Studies. As I said a little bit earlier, you could go directly to the website in Kenya to get more information. We're inviting people to register for what we call the sample teaser sessions. It helps them to identify, it's a very different way of learning, and it's not for everyone. It's very Hebraic, but it's also helps. The intercessors love it because it works with, it brings you into Africa. It shows you, even for teaching the teachers, we have to teach the teachers to use your background. You decide where you want to teach your particular module. What do you want to point to? What do you want to hold in your hands? So it's a whole learning system for a lot of teachers who like to be talking heads, but trying to help the education be extended to the point where somebody is getting the revelation of the mystery. And in getting that revelation, could be mobilized quickly in whatever nation they represent. Yeah, so the first curriculum is called Israel and the Nations, Past, Present, and Future. It's a biblical study of God's heart for Israel. Internationals are invited to be a part of it. In fact, they help support the work by being a part of it. I know many of us have been supporting Africans from a place of medical, schools. This is like supporting the African to be the missionary and the leader that they've called to be, so that they can rise up and serve the purposes of God beyond Africa into the nations.
Wow. Hey, amazing, Dean. Thank you so much. And Dean, can you just comment on like how many African people, what's the pulse on the ground regarding Israel? Because, for example, when I've been in Israel, and I'm sure others have seen the same, you see these huge swaths of African people coming. And as I understand it, many of them are even like paid by the government of their nation to go to Israel. Can you comment on that? Just that plus, what's the pulse of the average?
Those are Nigerians primarily that you're seeing that are being paid and have those situations availed to them. There's a movement. I can only say this: there's a movement in Africa at the bishop level. We've got to understand God's heart for Israel. We saw it during the Isaiah 62 fast. Our analytics showed us that of the millions that were participating in that fast, over 33% were coming from Africa alone. Those were the hubs that were being set. And that's with what we could show with analytics. There were many hubs that got set up in villages that didn't have internet. But our analytics for what we can show on the internet showed that the three main nations were Nigeria, Kenya, and Uganda, with Rwanda not far off. So we're really seeing it's, you know, the only way I could say it, it's like a revival. And even with some of the teaser sessions we've been doing and some of the teaching I've been doing in Kenya over the course of the year and other parts of Africa, I've never experienced it anywhere on the planet. How it's like a switch goes on. And many of us have had the experience yourself. I've been born again when all of a sudden God opened up our hearts to understand a biblical perspective to Israel and the Jewish people. And we began to see the plan of God. And what's more, we said, wow, I get to be a part of this plan. My family too. For Africa, it's like I've never seen it. You know, in 35 years of this kind of ministry, I've never seen it the way it is. So it
Wow.
is something happening, and they're not afraid to go during war. Now, the biggest hiccup is they don't have the finances like those in the Western nations, but they
Right.
have the hunger and they have the thirst, and they don't sit in a pew and wait years before, should I or shouldn't I? It's like, it's tough to keep up with them.
Okay.
So I hope that helps answer a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm going to show everybody for a moment here. This is the website he was referring to. So return.co.il, which of course is for Israel. The Prayer for Israel. The Aliyah Return Center is helping integrate people, Jewish people coming from the diaspora all over. They, learning Hebrew. Chaim Mailspin. I'll show his video after we pray for a bit there, because they have an altar, they have a house of prayer as well online as us. Chaim, if you remember, it's this guy right here. That's his son-in-law. I'll show his latest video after we pray. But Dean is a shaker mover. and